Greetings and welcome to Transformation Stories thanks to Keto and Carnivore. I'm John, the Carnivore teacher, and today we're joined by an incredible guest who has completely transformed his life. Casey, thank you so much for being here. Can you introduce yourself by telling us a little bit about yourself and share a bit about your life before you started Keto Carnivore?
Oh man, John, it's an honor to be here. Before you call me a fantastic guest, incredible guest, let's see how the interview plays out first. Let's not get the expectations too high. Oh man, it's an honor to be here. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed interviewing you on my podcast as well several times. We've had some great conversations, and we even got to meet in person this last year at Hack Your Health, which was awesome. So, yeah, my name is Casey Ruff. I'm a personal trainer. I have been in the industry for coming up on 18 years now. I studied architecture in college, but joined a kind of a corporate kind of gym to train in the off season for cycling at the time back in 2006. And yeah, just watching the personal trainers, it looked really interesting. I'd worked in gyms kind of in the past in high school and was interested in fitness myself. I was kind of growing up, I was kind of the chubby kid, and my parents had to buy me husky clothes, which I didn't exactly know what that meant. I just knew that it wasn't good. And I had lots of interest in sports and ice hockey and all those kinds of things. And so had a bit of experience at the gym, but watching the personal trainers, like I said, I really felt compelled to figure out what I needed to do, at least temporarily, to be a personal trainer. So I asked the manager what I needed to do to get a job there, and he gave me the name of the certification. I hit the books for a few months and got certified, and that was in March of 2007. That I had been a personal trainer. Eventually, I was trained up in using metabolic carts, which measure metabolic rate in people, or what most people would probably recognize as like a VO2 kind of a test where somebody is ramping up their exercise, their breathing, and finding out, things like their VO max, or how many calories they burn per minute per hour doing certain activities at certain heart rates. And that work eventually led me to kind of the low carbohydrate space, where we learned that we could manipulate somebody's metabolism, while they were exercising, doing endurance sports, and also at rest. We could get people to not only burn more calories if that was their goal, to kind of like burn more fat essentially, but we could also use exercise and diet when prescribed correctly to help people burn off higher amounts of fat, one of our two energy sources, either fat or carbohydrates. When somebody's fed a lot of carbohydrates, the way I was taught doing cycling and personal training, that is your fuel source, and your body becomes quite good at burning carbohydrates and not so good at burning fat. And that's a problem, and especially in the endurance athlete world, because you only store so many calories from carbohydrates, a very finite amount that your body can store, and it runs out. So most people know that if they're exercising and they go too hard for too long, they will run out of energy very suddenly, just like a car running out of gas. Where the body actually stores hundreds of thousands of calories of fat, depending on what your weight and your body fat percentage is. Even if you're extremely lean and have a very low body fat percentage, that number could be tens of thousands of calories of fat that your body has that can burn as a fuel source. And so for an endurance athlete, it's kind of a no-brainer. Like, why am I burning so much of my carbohydrate energy that runs out, and I'm trying to fuel that as I'm going? I was eating cookies and Fig Newtons and the power bars and the gels, and washing it all down with sugary drinks, which of course like sucks for your digestion. Your stomach hurts the whole time. But to be able to perform at a high level for more than an hour or two, that's what you kind of had to do. And so again, just over the course, we learned that we could shift the metabolic rate over to burning more fat, less carbohydrate. That eventually led me to different work that was being done by people like Nina Teicholz, and suggesting that fat is not necessarily bad for us. And then yeah, it was about 2018 that the concept of a ketogenic diet really kind of grabbed my attention. When we had for this company, we had to do weight loss contests for people. We it, the company hosting these learned that if they did these temporary weight loss challenges, they would generate a lot of money. You'd get people really excited, really motivated. They discount our services, so we would actually make a little bit less money when we did it. But we were expected to sign people up in these different cohorts. And initially, it was like we would do it twice a year for 3 months each. But the company was making so much money, they started doing it every quarter and doing it for 2 months. So the way it worked for us personal trainers is like you have a month where you're trying to find people to do this contest, which if you've done one or two of them, you know it's not going to work. It always fails. You're trying to sell people on the idea of doing the contest. You try to pitch them your products and services and get them to do training or meal plans or whatever. People would sign up, they'd weigh in, we'd give them a stack of documents that was all their elaborate recipes and food lists, and people would be shopping for all kinds of exotic ingredients. One day, my client called me at night crying from the grocery store because she didn't know where to find the arrowroot powder. And I hardly knew where to find all that stuff. And yeah, the compliance percentage of people doing those percentage company wide was somewhere around 15%, 15% of people who started the contest would actually stand on the scale, regardless of whether they did well or not. It would be about 15% of people that would even like stand on the scale to get out of the contest. And so for us, it was like the 1 month of trying to prep for that and convince people to do the contest, the 2 months of trying to herd cats and keep people on this plan. And then right after that stopped, you're already under pressure because the next one's coming up. You have another month to reload new people, which is always new people. Because again, if you'd done the contest once, you weren't going to waste your money and do it again. You had all the resources anyway. But anyway, back in 2018, we had a guy who I was somewhat working with, and he told me what he was eating, and he was kind of the kind of guy that was like waking up in the middle of the night to eat a bowl of cereal, had about 25 pounds to lose. And, I could just recognize even at that time that he wasn't eating a lot of protein and not a lot of fat. So we told him, just it sounds like you're eating a lot of carbs. Let's see if we can get that down. Try to eat more fats and proteins. And 3 days later, he came back and said, like, yo, I've lost like 3 pounds in 3 days. What is this keto stuff? And I was like, well, that's really good weight loss. There's nowhere in any of my personal training manuals behind me that say you can lose weight that quickly. So I didn't know what was up with that. But sure enough, we started to dive into the science of ketosis and ketogenic diets. And that was the last time I listened to music in my car. It just sent me down this absolute obsession of learning about this insane kind of diet that was against anything that we had been telling people at the time. And all of a sudden, it's like all the people that were not getting great results are now getting tremendous results. We always, in every single cohort of that weight loss contest, we always had a winner that came from the group that my wife and I ran. We would teach them free seminars. We gave them completely different meal plans that were all low carbohydrate. And it just, man, like your job satisfaction of like, you're giving people advice. Nobody can do it. Not even the trainers could do what we were recommending. Like we were telling people, like you need to get 9 to 11 servings of organic vegetables every single day, eat the rainbow. It was just this mess of people like buying expensive food and throwing it away at the end of the week, and they'd end up with crazy cravings and stalled weight loss. It was just completely different job satisfaction once we said no. Actually, like maybe you don't need as much of that stuff. We need just the stuff that everybody said you shouldn't be having, which is fatty red meat in particular. It just completely changed my career and the career of my wife as well. And yeah, that's been kind of my journey into the world of low carbohydrate, which eventually led into carnivore diets.
Wow. That reminded me of The Biggest Loser, which you kind of described before you changed everything for your clients.
It's
It was
on that
lose
note.
weight no matter what. And then maybe they lost a little bit out of deprivation, right? And then we never know what happened afterwards. They probably gained it all back.
Are you familiar with the study they did in 2016 on the Biggest Loser contestants?
I'm not, no.
Okay, so it's awesome that you brought that up. The metabolic carts that I was using was measuring something called resting metabolic rate. So when you are doing nothing, we would put people horizontal in a comfortable chair in the dark for 20, 30 minutes in the morning, and we would just let them just breathe. And analyzing their breath would tell me exactly how many calories they would be burning for that 20 or 30 minutes. Then we could extrapolate that out to 24 hours to just see like how many calories is your body burning. So in 2016, they did a study on the Biggest Loser contestants where not only did they see how much did their weight rebound, which, as you said, I think it was like 60 to 70% of the cohort of Biggest Loser contestants, they gained 60, 70% of their weight back at the end of 6 years. But also they looked at that resting metabolic rate, and the resting metabolic rate was greatly suppressed after doing the contest, and it never really quite recovered, meaning what they were doing in the contest by, eating less calories and burning lots of calories, that works. And that's why it's so enticing, because it does work, but it works in a And over time, your body compensates by lowering the total number of calories that it itself is burning. So I had the opportunity actually in 2010 to do a resting metabolic rate test on somebody who had just got booted from the contest. She lived here in Utah. She came in to do the test, had amazing stories, man. You wouldn't believe these stories of what kind of hell they put them through. You think it's like really like well organized and like they were provided food and all this stuff, and it was nothing like that. It was a disaster. But anyway, this woman, based on her age, height, weight, and gender, she should have been burning about 2,000 calories for her resting metabolic rate, just based on those things. And we got her numbers back about 1,000 calories less than that. So what people don't understand is when they do calorie restricted diets and they combine that with a lot of exercise, again, you're creating a bit of a caloric deficit, and that's going to work. But what you don't realize is you are setting yourself up for that weight gain on the back end. You're causing your own obesity by doing what you think is the very best thing. So yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, and it's quite frustrating for a lot of people, especially now as we're recording this, the end of January, beginning of February. Like, people have these goals, they go to the gym. I see the same people at the gym facilities that I go to, and they're running the same and they look kind of the same, and they look that way the year before and the year before and the year before. So yeah, it's a really good point that you brought up. If we're following the conventional advice of eat less, move more, your body will fight back on the back end.
Interesting. Wow. That is really interesting. Fasting. When we're fasting in history, when our ancestors had to fast because food was not available, it sounds like our metabolism slowed down to match that so that we could stay alive. That's kind of what it sounds like we're doing on purpose today with these restriction diets.
Okay, I'm so glad you asked this, John. This is a fantastic point. And this is something that really, really, really blew my mind when I was first getting into low carbohydrate diets and fasting. Ironically, fasting and caloric deprivation are two completely separate things. They work completely differently. And it just absolutely, like I said, blew my mind. Because after doing, all of these tests, I was, with this company for a long time. I was overseeing this entire program in the Western region. So I was traveling around to other clubs and teaching other trainers how to interpret these results and things that we learned along the way. I'd done these thousands and thousands of times. I knew that if somebody calorie restricted, they would teach themselves to burn less and less calories. They would be efficient, essentially, and not burn as many calories. That makes sense, and it's exactly what you said. Like, if you're not eating a lot, your body's going to go in like a conservation mode and kind of like hold on or hoard, be really miserly with all the calories it has, and so it would slow down your metabolism. It would cool you down, literally, like you'd feel colder. Your cravings would go up to try to reward you for finding any food when you did, because it didn't seem like you were finding any food. But then in around 2018, 2019, the wave of the kind of, in my experience at least, the first wave of people doing like purposeful intermittent fasting kind of started. And these people would come in and do the exact same test, and their metabolic rates would not be lowered even if they were doing intermittent fasting. They wouldn't even be normal if they were doing intermittent fasting. I saw people coming in with higher, like hundreds of calories higher. I remember one guy in particular, his metabolic rate should have been about 1,950 calories, 2,000 calories, right in there for his metabolic rate. And we measured him. I ran the test twice to confirm. We measured him at 2,600 calories. So his body was just flying through all these calories, was burning a lot. He did not have a suppression of energy. He did not have cravings. He was not cold. He was actually very warm and very energetic. And I'm like, wow, I mean, this looks really good. Like, your results are good. But the one thing I know is that if you're eating less than that 2,600 calories, you're going to crash your metabolism. So you got to eat the very least that many calories. And he was like kind of exasperated and looked at me and like, I can't eat that many calories. Like, what do you want me to do? Like, I've been eating mostly fats and proteins and I get really full. I'm nowhere near that number. How do I get to that number? And I'm like, yeah, man, I don't know. That's a really good point. And it was mostly through the work of Jason Fung that really kind of showed me the difference between fasting and caloric restriction and how different those two things are. And one thing that fasting does is it forces the body to find stored fat, the fat that's already there. Where somebody who is doing caloric restriction, they might be eating enough frequency to have pings of insulin all day. And we know that insulin is kind of trapping in the fat and fat cells. And so it's almost like you have this very abundant source of calories already on your body. It doesn't come from the food that you eat in a day. It's just the stuff you're already dragging around with you every single day. Insulin hides it. So you might have, again, somebody who's 250 pounds and maybe 40% body fat. They might have 300,000 calories of fat energy on their body. It's calories that they've already consumed, and the body would like nothing more than to get rid of them. That's what it's stored them for. And if you're caloric restricting, you're eating so frequently that the insulin is hiding that source of calories, where if you do intermittent fasting, all of a sudden your insulin cannot stay high. It has to be low. And then it's like your body finds those hundreds of thousands of calories of fat. And so it's like, oh, wow, great. Like, we stored this up. Like, here's a sandwich I ate in 2021, and here's some pasta I ate in 2022. We stored it there for a coming winter, and there was never a coming winter because the person was just eating maybe less calories, but eating so frequently. And so in fasting, it matters less how many calories you're consuming. It matters how many calories are available to the body, not just with the food, but also the fat energy that your body finds in the fat state. So it's a totally different mechanism. It's really hard to explain. It was really hard for me to wrap my mind around, but oh my goodness, what a game changer for people who wanted to just effortlessly lose fat, feel good, and feel like they had good energy, is they could do some form of intermittent fasting in a really gentle way, and they'll just burn off the fat they have. It's great.
Oh, wow. So basically, ketogenic is a fasting mimicking diet where we're eating 1 or 2 meals a day instead of 6. It's not carbs and sugar, so the insulin isn't spiking really, really high, just a little bit for the protein. And that's how we can keep our metabolic rate up.
Well said.
All
Yeah,
right,
well said.
perfect. Let's go to you now. Before you changed your diet, did you notice changes? What were some of your physical issues, any problems that you may have had before you changed your own diet? And if there weren't that many, what did you see? What did you observe in your own self when you switched your diet to keto carnivore?
Yeah, great question. If you would have asked me at the time, of course I would have said, no, I'm not dealing with anything. I've never been diagnosed with any conditions. Fortunately, I've really not had very many like major, destructive injuries for all the ice hockey I played. Little things here and there. Like every year, my shoulder would kind of go out and be quite painful for a few weeks, but that would kind of go away. And then it's like the things with like aging, through my 30s into my 40s was kind of like, yeah, just a little bit less energetic or whatever. I think for a lot of people on carnivore, it's almost like a kind of reflective thing when you look back and go, oh my goodness, like I was dealing with X for so long and I didn't even really realize, excuse me, like how much that was affecting and running my life. And in hindsight, it's like, oh wow, I had a laundry list of different things that I had. And so, for example, I mean, again, like not the best energy. I'd always have to eat, something every 2 to 3 hours between clients. It was, tough to go from one client to the next and have good energy if you didn't have like a granola bar or something. So you're prepping lots of food, you're trying to eat healthy. I mentioned, the occasional like injuries here and there, nothing major. Pretty chronic like athlete's foot from my feet being in shoes and ice skates and being sweaty as a trainer all the time. That never seemed to like fully go away. It would like come and go. Things like sun tolerance. Couldn't be out in the sun very long or I'd get sunburned. I'm definitely like a ginger, so blonde, reddish hair. Can't be in the sun too long. And the biggest thing I would say was kind of like mentally. I was dealing, again, I only recognize this in hindsight, but I was dealing with a very fast and kind of tended to be anxious mind. My mind had a tendency to just kind of spin around in scenarios and situations that wouldn't ever end up happening. And of course, like I said, I wasn't ever diagnosed with anxiety. I never taken medications for it. It's just something that I was dealing with. And so, along my journey of, learning about keto diets and ketosis, you start to come across another cohort of people who are doing what is called a carnivore diet. I listened to Joe Rogan as he hosted Sean Baker for the first time. And this doctor in his 50s is describing only eating ribeyes, and he's like deadlifting all this weight and is a world champion rower in his age division. I'm just like, well, that makes no sense. I remember turning off that episode halfway through because I thought it was absolute nonsense. He was saying something which I more agree with now than I did then, but he was talking about like how he didn't have a lot of use for things like blood work, blood markers, which again, I thought was like kind of ridiculous. Of course, I agree with him a little bit more now, like I said. But anyway, over time, I started to come across the work of other people doing carnivore, and eventually in May of 2019, I decided, like, well, let me just try this for 30 days. I think it's nuts that I wouldn't need, things like almonds or vegetables or whatever. But let me just try it. Let me see if I never poop again, or maybe I'll just die of a heart attack, and that'll be the end of it. And fine. And yeah, it was about 10 days into my journey on carnivore where I had a stressful situation. Somebody needed a refund for several sessions that they had purchased. It was a huge waste of time for me. It was commission that I made and then got taken out of my paycheck. So it's not ideal. And I just remember handling it like, okay, that's totally fine. Like, wish the person well, took care of everything, gave them their money, and said, if you need anything in the future, let me know. And I just kind of, yeah, in hindsight, look back and said, like, why did I take that so easily? And like, why is the blue sky so joyous, and like trees and birds and just nature was just like, it was just nice. And I realized that voice in my head, the spinning anxiety, was much more quiet, and I could problem solve and deal with things so much better. And to this day, for all the amazing things that I enjoy on carnivore, like for example, like I have not missed one single training session with a client in the 6 years that I've been carnivore for being sick. Like I have not missed 1 hour of time because
Wow.
I have not been sick. I don't have athlete's foot. I never get sunburns. My body fat percentage has lowered. I'm easily able to maintain muscle mass, lifting very little during the week, like surprisingly, not very long. But the primary reason that I stay on carnivore is my mental health, like the feeling of having a clear mind that is not anxious is such a valuable gift. That is again the primary reason that I stick with carnivore, and I'm not willing to give it up because of that. It's really quite amazing to be here at, I just turned 41 this week, and at 41 I feel way better than I did at age 30. I never get injured. My performance is quite high in the sports that I love. So but yeah, the mental health thing was really surprising to me.
Amazing. You mentioned one of the things was a little bit of weight loss. You didn't have that much to lose. You're not one of the people that had to lose a lot of weight, and that was one of the big things you talked about. Did you notice a recompositioning of your body? Did you
That's
notice changes, and what did you notice?
Yeah, that's what I mean. I should have been more clear. Yeah, I never had a tremendous amount of weight to lose. I
Okay.
seem to maintain my weight somewhere around 180 to 185. Of course, over the years, based on things I've eaten, that can drift up again on the higher range. I just did a DEXA a few weeks ago, and I'm right at 180 and 16% body fat, which I'm quite happy with. And so yes, again, I lift maybe 20, 30 minutes a week, not more than that. I
Mhm.
don't really take any supplements besides creatine. And yeah, just the ability to maintain muscle and keep up with 20-year-olds on the ice is pretty cool. So yeah, there was some recomposition. It wasn't anything major, but I was fortunate enough to not need any major body recomposition. But I'll ask you too. I mean, the people that you've come across in this journey, isn't it interesting to find so many people that, maybe they start on the diet because they need to lose weight, or they talk about that being the main motivator. And after a while, they almost like forget about the weight
Right.
loss or the fat loss. Like it's happening, but that's not even like their favorite part about it. Like I've had interviews where people list 20 different things, and then I get off the interview and they're like, oh my goodness, I forgot I lost 35 pounds. I didn't even mention that. Like,
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
it becomes the side effect. It was the first reason we start. It's why I started, and I lost my 35 pounds, which was all I needed to do. And I didn't know all these other amazing things were going to happen. And then I don't talk about weight loss anymore. And I notice on YouTube the key words, the things that people are looking for, especially this time of year, is wanting to lose weight.
Good
And
point.
I'm not talking about that enough because that's like it's not that big of a deal. I mean, it just happens.
Good point. Yep.
It's
Good
it's
point.
really amazing. Before I get to my next question, you mentioned creatine, and that's the only supplement you take. Um, what would you say was your observation of yourself without creatine versus with creatine? What are you getting out of the creatine supplement?
That is another really great question.
Mhm.
I'll say what I tell all of my clients is whatever supplements you're taking, use whatever you have. Don't buy any more until you run out of something, and then pay attention for the next few days. If you really notice that, like, you're missing that supplement. You can always just go back to Amazon or the grocery store and buy it that next day. But I by and large think most supplements are kind of best case scenario, like a waste of money. I don't think a lot of them do much. If anything, I'd want somebody to have a really good reason. And so for me, like the research on creatine is quite extensive. There's lots of physical, and now we're learning a lot of mental benefits. It is very inexpensive to find a good quality creatine hydrate. Yeah, there should be a boost in energy, should help with lifting, and again, mental benefits and things like that. My diet has primarily been red meat for several years at this point. And based on, I can fairly consistently eat about a pound and a half of red meat per day, and supplement it with maybe 6 to 10 eggs. Since creatine is found in a good quantity in red meat, I can't say that I notice like a massive benefit from taking creatine. I've been quite regular with it for the last 3 or 4 weeks. And like I said, I don't notice a major difference. My assumption is because I have been eating foods that are already rich in creatine, I'm probably not getting a massive boost from taking the supplement. To me, it's just kind of a self experimentation. It's also just like what I would consider low hanging fruit. It's just something I think, why not? It's inexpensive, it's easy to take, let me just try it and see. So I think, somebody plant-based or vegan might notice a huge difference when they start taking it versus somebody
Yeah.
like me again, or other people on creatine that may just not notice a huge difference.
That's what I've heard Dr. Berry give that answer. Just eat
He
meat
did.
and you'll get your
Oh,
creatine.
there
There
you
you
go.
go.
Yeah.
But supplementing more, if you're health conscious, you go to the gym, you work out, and you may see a benefit.
Yep.
What tips would you give to someone struggling with the adaptation phase of becoming fat adapted, which is where our body, you mentioned it earlier, starts to use the stored body fat? Like some people have trouble getting into that phase. What would you give them for tips?
That's, yeah, another really good question. First of all, I would want them to understand the type of personality that they are. So the way I explain it is like you have a cold pool somewhere. There's a shallow end that you can wade in, and there's the 20-foot platform you can cannonball into. Some people prefer the cannonball. Some people prefer wading in. Either way, eventually you're going to get wet. So I don't have a big preference whether somebody wants to dive right in to the diet and get the adaptation period over with quickly. Other people, they may want to do it a little bit more gently. I don't see any harm in going either way. And it also depends on where somebody is in general. So, for example, I transitioned the way a lot of people do from, kind of low carbohydrate ish to keto to carnivore. So, for me, it was just removing a few vegetables. Um, Not really a massive change for me. So, my adaptation wasn't terrible. Where other people switching from vegetarian, vegan, or a standard American diet, that might be a pretty rough transition. To help with that kind of thing, I want people to be thinking about the foods that they can enjoy versus focusing only on the things that they really love at the moment and can't have. So rather than say like you'll never eat cake again, don't think about soda or bread or whatever. Just be like, no, like you get to enjoy, tasty foods. What do you like? If you like eggs, um, then yeah, think about the amazing ways you can prepare eggs, or the steaks you can have, or what kinds of recipes with ground beef do you like. I like people to really understand that they should be fully satiated when they're eating their meals, which is a new feeling for a lot of people. Most people are, deliberately or not trying to, control their portion sizes or maybe their calories, where in a carnivore diet it's really beneficial to get fully satiated and like uninterested in food. Um, so that would be one. Definitely want people to be focusing on a really good combination of fats and proteins. So rather than have somebody do a carnivore diet that's mostly chicken breast, pork chops, and sirloin, I'd want somebody be thinking about chuck or ribeyes. Yeah, a little bit more fattier ground beef that's less expensive anyway at the store. I think that really helps. And then another really big one, especially in the beginning, is salt. Making sure that somebody's getting plenty of salt or salty things. Even in the beginning, if things are not carnivore, having pickles or olives, the pickle juice. Just things that are kind of salty, or on the carnivore side of things, you could do dehydrated meat or beef sticks, or eggs with salt on them. Just whatever salty things can really help with the transition, can help with cravings. And yeah, I think those are the things that most people miss. So focusing on fats and proteins, you're eating to full satiety, and getting plenty of salt, I think really helps with the transition.
Thank you. Very good answers to those, and very good advice. The advice I give is to ease in. I know you said you can either cannonball in or dip your toes in. Either way, you're going to get wet. I found that the people that cannonball in after the fifth or sixth day, they experience, sugar-loving gut bacteria withdrawal, or like you said, salt electrolyte imbalance withdrawal symptoms, and they quit. So
Yeah,
many
good
people
point.
quit the ketogenic diet because they just jump right in, and some people can jump right in. That's the way their head is wired, right? And I think more people are wired in a way where they want to allow their body to adjust, and it's more long-term result I've found.
That's a really good point. I like looking at it that way. And I can't remember who I stole this from, but I think this is a really good analogy that'll point out for people. Let's say you want to go to Bali, right? You're going to travel to Bali. It's going to be amazing. The travel to Bali actually quite sucks. Like you've got to pack, you've got to sit in lines at the airport and layovers and all these, flights that kind of suck and a lot of turbulence. And like getting to Bali is not that easy, and it takes a while, and it does kind of suck. Like you're with a bunch of like smelly people and strangers. Now, once you get there, Bali's awesome. It's great. And if it were like the diet, it's like once you get to Bali, you could stay in Bali for as long as you want. But like all of those, travel woes and all the flights and all the lines and all that stuff, it's actually the sign that tells you you're heading to Bali. So you can kind of put up with some of that, understanding that, yeah, I'll ride this out and in 36 hours I'll be in Bali. Like that's kind of the same with the diet. Is like it does kind of suck to transition. And yeah, you might have some sugar cravings and these things that are not pleasant, but it is the sign that your body is shifting and is switching over. And so just write it out, have some patience, and yeah, you'll get to carnivore Bali before you know it.
I like that analogy a lot. All right, now you and we've talked. I remember, I think it was our third. We've been interviewed 4 times on Boundless Body Radio. Am I right? So I
That's
think
right.
the third time was my idea of let's talk about what foods we eat. I told you what I ate, and then I asked you what you ate, and how do you make it, and how do I make it. So this is a different interview because I'm interviewing you. What are you eating these days that's related to keto carnivore? That because everybody's diet's a little different within that box. What do you eat?
Yeah, John, I just have to say, I enjoyed that episode so much that I actually reposted that episode as one of my
I know
favorite
you.
episodes on Christmas Day. I thought that was so fun and practical and helpful for people that really want to break it down. And if nothing
Yeah.
else, it was just fun to like drool over each other's food, which is
That was
great.
my Christmas Day surprise too, because I
Good.
normally listen to one of your video podcasts, you right?
Uh,
And there it was. I'm like, what did I click something by accident? Why is my face coming up?
That's
That
hilarious,
was so cool.
man. Yeah, it was one of my favorite episodes. So I'm glad caught you off guard on
You
Christmas.
did, you
Uh,
did. You really
Good,
did.
good, good, good. I think I'm like a lot of carnivores where they kind of settle into the simplicity of a
Mhm.
carnivore diet, and you start eating foods that it's really difficult to get sick of. So I'll just say, like a normal staple of mine is some type of a steak. On that episode, we talked about how each one of us does our steaks, and I do mine in a way that um, I'm getting just really high quality steak every single night. It costs me about $12 to $15. It's not terribly expensive when
Mhm.
you're only eating, once or twice a day. Again, that's very affordable, and it's just delicious, lightly seasoned. I get a nice sear on either side and then cook that to kind of a medium rare. It's absolutely delicious. So that's definitely a staple. Another staple lately here in the Salt Lake Valley. It's been cold wintertime, and so craving things that are warmer and more filling. And so I've been doing a very simple like chuck roast in a slow cooker with broth. If I'm in a pinch and I just want a carnivore meal to go, it's a little bit lean, so I don't like to do this all the time. But again, in a pinch, it works great. I'll just pick up like a rotisserie chicken from a store like either Costco or Sam's or something. I like Costco's the best, and I'll eat all the meat off the chicken. But now I've got a great chicken carcass that I'll just throw in either the Instant Pot or a crock pot, make some broth with. That makes several quarts of broth. That's really delicious. And so yeah, chuck roast slow cooked in broth is this like really warm, filling kind of soupy deliciousness. I might add some sour cream or maybe a light bit of cheese or whatever. But you're eating the chuck roast and just kind of slurping the broth, which is really quite good. That's been a go to. Eggs are eggs a day, just depending on how I'm feeling, whether I do them hard boiled, um, or scrambled at night, or fried eggs. Makes a great steak sauce, as you well know. And then yeah, everything else to me is just more like a condiment. I eat every other animal food, anything that sounds good. Fish rarely sounds good to me, but if I'm at a restaurant, maybe I'll have some of that. Um, Chicken also sounds better to me, kind of more in the summertime than in the winter, but sometimes I'll have chicken breast. But I notice if I deviate much from fatty red meat, I definitely feel a little flat. I've learned that like if I'm gonna play ice hockey tomorrow, tonight I want my meal to be steak and eggs. I want, fatty steak. I want a ribeye, and I want to make sure that I have, 8 eggs cooked in butter or what have you. Otherwise, I just feel like my energy is not quite the same. Like I said, I'm fine. It just feels a little flat. I feel like I lose the kind of like top edge kind of bounce. And so, yeah, that's pretty much my diet. It is very simple. I would argue that even though it is, prices of eggs are higher than they have been, and I'm eating, ribeye steaks or New York steaks pretty much every day. Like, again, when you're eating once or twice a day, it's not expensive. This is the least amount of time and money I've ever spent on food. And yeah, everything else, like I said, is kind of supplemental, whether I'm doing like dehydrated, meat as a snack or meat sticks or whatever. Those are all fine, but that's basically what I'm eating in a day.
All right, good stuff. Good stuff. I've noticed that when I have chicken fat, um, dairy fat, and I'm not getting enough ruminant meat fat, I can tell that I want it more, or it fills me up more. I'm more satiated when I have fatty red meat. Even if I put more butter on it, it's the tallow that seems to satisfy me the most. So you
Couldn't agree more. That's, yeah,
observe the
really
same
well
thing, yeah.
said.
I
Yeah.
look at fat differently now. I look at it on the plate as energy. I look at it as nutrition. And I did, of course, I used to cut it all off and throw it away years ago. A lot of people
Uh,
did. We were fat phobic.
yep.
I would never do that anymore.
Best
Reaction
part.
from family, friends, coworkers. I'm sure because you eat this way, have you seen any reactions, or have you eased into it so slowly that you don't see too many reactions?
Well, I would say largely supportive. I've definitely been challenged a few times by people. We took a trip to go visit some friends in South Carolina a few years ago, and we were staying with them. We told them like, look, we just do this weird thing with our eating. Don't worry about it. Like, we'll go to the store, we'll buy our own stuff. Just, we want to hang out with you guys and appreciate our time. And getting pressed on like, well, you don't like pasta, so you don't like bread, you don't like potatoes. Like, why don't you like risotto? And it's like, no, the problem is I love those things, and I can't stop myself very easily when I have them. It's easier to just miss. And then I would say it's really fine now, but in the beginning it was a little challenging. My wife had a bit of a history of an eating disorder as she was growing up. Um, and there's some fascinating research now into ketogenic diets and retraining the brain in people that have had eating disorders in the past. And I would say, yeah, a bit of a challenge with my wife and her family when it looks like she's going on some very restrictive diet. And it looks like, since I'm the nutrition coach and she's not, it looks like I'm, making her do that, or yeah, enforcing her, or forcing her to do it, or heavily influencing, which is not the case. But so yeah, there'd been some challenges there, but it's been several years and really not much. My dad and I go to lunch every single month to catch up and spend time together, and he's very understanding, and we go to the same restaurant every time, and they give me a pound of carne asada, which is delicious, and he can eat whatever he likes. And the important thing is not what we're eating, but that we're together and sharing stories. And so in general, I think most people kind of understand. And then also, I have to say, like, more people are finding out about this in the last few weeks. I've met several strangers at random places, like, going to our NHL hockey games, or somebody at the water fountain where I collect spring water, and somebody just mentions the word carnivore, and it's like, where where did you hear about that? How did you hear about that? Like, the word is seeming to get out a little bit. So that's really encouraging and exciting, and hopefully it's something that people are understanding a bit more, and wanting to at least be curious about. So that's encouraging.
I agree with you. When I was in a restaurant lately, I don't go that often at all. It's usually when I'm celebrating somebody's birthday and they've called me to go to a restaurant. I have my conversation with the server, and then the cook comes out and I talk about seed oils. That's my number one thing that it's just no hard, no seed oil. You must cook it a certain way. I can control the carbs and sugar by what I order. And a few times recently, they said, "Are you a carnivore?" Like, I don't say it. They're starting to, I guess, see more people that are asking, requesting, I want butter. I want this on the table. So I hope
Great.
the trend, I hope it's spreading. I hope we're getting more and more people aware, because the only way to break these myths of cholesterol and saturated fat and all the things that we have heard about fat being bad and making you fat, all the wrong things. Hopefully we can start turning these things around. Your
Yeah.
podcast, my podcast, everybody's podcast online. I mean, that's my goal.
Yeah. Love it.
One of the final questions I have for you, Casey, books, other people's podcasts, YouTube's, symposiums. Where do you learn and grow? What do you like?
Me personally, I try to take in a pretty diverse amount of information. If I'm making recommendations, I definitely send people to your channel. I think you do such
Thank
a
you.
great job with the way you present information, and really playing to your strengths as being a teacher and an educator. And you're almost like a Ben Bickman to me. You're just so good at
Whoa,
doing
that's
that.
a huge
Um,
compliment.
he's okay. He's all right. Yeah. I love trying to get information from lots of different places. I take in a lot of my information through audio as I'm out doing things, driving around between clients or going on walks. So I don't get to watch as much as I get to listen. And I've got this several podcasts I try to keep up on. I'm also doing a lot of vetting out of my guests that I'm going to host, and so I learn quite a bit about things that they're into, so I can have fun interviews and do that kind of research. So that gets me some diverse information. Yeah, as far as learning symposiums, like you said, I mean, yeah, just what a wonderful way to travel to some of these conferences and meet so many people in our space doing so much work, and combine that with all the lay people also who are there just to learn and grow in their knowledge as well, and just to see how kind and generous everybody in the community is, and how much they are earnestly looking for the truth. And I've always said that if you're interested in doing a conference, you will not miss any bit of the sacrifice that it takes you to get there. Whatever time and money it takes to go to a conference, you'll absolutely love it, and it will be well worth it. So I definitely encourage people to go out and experience that. Um, and you get to just rub elbows with some of the just greats in our field. So all those things are really resources that I use. There's several books that have influenced me in my journey. I would say the number one book that's influenced my journey is The Big Fat Surprise by Nina Teicholz. I definitely recommend that to everybody. And I would argue that even if you're not fully like fascinated by food as a topic, I would argue that that book would be interesting for anybody to read, and does read like a historical thriller. She did such a good job writing that book. But there's many others that I recommend if somebody wants to learn more about a carnivore diet. I try to assess like what level they're at, and then make a recommendation on whether Paul Saladino's book or Dr. Sean Baker's book or whatever resource might be most helpful for them. But yeah, those are some of the things that I use. And yeah, just try to gather a lot of information from other people that are doing great work in our space as well.
All right, great. Those are great books. And I'm like you, I'm auditory. I listen on the road, I listen on my bike, I'm listening in the car and not watching as much. And I learn so much. I take in so much information. Sometimes I'm overflowing, and I have to take notes and everything. It's great. I get excited when I learn, and I think you do too, for sure. Where can we find you? You are all over the place, Mr. Boundless Body Radio. Tell us.
Yeah, the easiest place to find all of our stuff is just our website, which is myboundlessbody.com. Boundless Body is just the company that my wife and I started during the pandemic. We were placed on unemployment by that big gym and had to reimagine how we would be working with people in the future. So we started our own business where we do, personal training here in the Salt Lake Valley, or virtual training with people all over the world, nutrition coaching, tissue work, Pilates work, that kind of thing. And so yeah, we're on all social media, and we have our YouTube channel, but really you can find everything if you just go to our website, which is myboundlessbody.com. And then just the first thing that I put on that website is a book now button. So anybody around the world can always book a complimentary 30-minute session where we can, chat about, diets, keto, carnivore diets. We can talk about their, resistance training program, what they're doing, what they can maybe add in to boost their results. That's a free resource. Anybody in the world can sign up for that and find a time that works in their time zone. And we love meeting people out there and working with people in any way that they want. But yeah, the main hub where you can find everything is myboundlessbody.com.
Excellent. Casey, thank you. This has been fantastic. You answered a lot of great questions. And you are, I feel like you're my friend. We did meet in person once, but I felt that way even before we met.
Totally.
So, and I
Yeah.
listened to pretty much, you're in my ear every day. So I'm listening to interview. I think the last one I listened to, I forget her name. It was about mental health. But before that, it was Doug with the metabolic symposium for metabolic health, which is coming up this Friday, which I get to go to because it's in my city.
Excellent.
I get in the car and I'm there in 10 minutes. And
amazing.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to go there and tell him, hey, I just watched your interview with Casey. It was great.
That's awesome. Well, it's like 20 degrees here in the Salt Lake Valley.
Ouch.
And it's the weekend where all of you guys, all of my friends are going to be in Boca enjoying each other's company and the weather. So I'm going to be doubly jealous this weekend when I see all the pictures on social media. So give everybody a warm hug from me. And yes, I consider you a dear friend of mine. And it's always just a pleasure to chat with you. And yeah, you do amazing work. And like I said, very proud to consider you one of my really good friends.
That's great. Thank you so much, Casey. Have a wonderful day. Stay on. I want to talk to you after I end the recording. All right.
That's great.
All right.